This is SimNews.TV, and you're listening to the Superleague show. Good evening, everybody. Well, once again, we have so much to get through after the Spanish Grand Prix at Valencia. It's been one heck of a showdown, and we've got so much to talk about. Jake Sanson here once again, and I'm joined in the studio, as always, by Kacper and Ben Willis. Hello, boys. How are we doing?
Hello. All good.
Hey, not too bad.
Well, I'm not entirely sure where we start, but certainly we've got an awful lot of things to discuss. Valencia was definitely particularly exciting right from the word go because we had so many upgrades from pretty much all the teams on the grid coming in this time, Ben. It was really going to make for an interesting race, and, well, we definitely got one as a result.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were back on dev cycle for most of the teams. As we've mentioned before, it takes 20 days to an upgrade, so we're seeing a trend where everybody upgrades every 2 races. And yeah, most of the field did some form of upgrade. The only ones who didn't were Vodball and Storm as well. And I think Madcape were there without an upgrade. But, you know, we saw a lot of jumping in the order of cars. Adonis rocks up with, you know, in terms of development points, the best car here. Nordson up there as well, Hawkeye, and people who would upgrade last time slipped down. You know, Vodball were only sort of the 5th, 6th best car there. Same with Wowsters, they weren't too far up, and Madcape still languishing at the bottom. But it did make for a great race with all those upgrades. Few in the engine department as well. All the engine suppliers bar Valiant, upgraded. So, you know, plenty of change for this one.
It was a really interesting plot to come into the weekend with, and we obviously had a little bit more musical chairs in terms of driver seats as well, Kacper. A few changes, but probably the most dramatic of those was Daniel de Jong being replaced at Madcape by Ryan Walker, of all people.
I mean, I think it was inevitable that De Jong is going to go, considering he didn't finish a single race so far, and this is the 4th round of this season. That's just unacceptable. And Ryan Walker, well, you know, you never really know. Just, he did quite all right, if I recall correctly now.
It's nice to have him back, to be fair, actually. He's been kicking around the last few years, you know, doing the odd race or two. I know he hasn't necessarily had the time over sort of weekday evenings to race, but now he does, and you know, he's a solid driver there. He'll make sure he gets the car at the end and pick up points, and it's personally as Drake manager, it's nice to see the 2011 Super League lineup back together, Ryan Walker and Lee Morris, so it makes me happy as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got a few more driver changes to discuss as well. Obviously, the Red Archer team, we now have Jeffrey Fournier making his first of what we think is 2 outings. Ben, you obviously managed to get another good opportunity in at GSR. How was that for you, my friend?
Yeah, it was nice to be driving the car again. This race didn't go to plan, shall we say? But again, it's nice to have the experience in the top tier. That'll probably be the last outing for me for a while. Hopefully we get someone else in, because I'll end up running out of reserve races at this rate. So hopefully we get someone in there, and someone who can help the team, you know, score some decent points. But yeah, it was good fun.
So obviously we talk about Jeffrey Fournier. Also, good to see Jordan in there again at Adonis, and also, we have an absence from Emmanuel Gasgela, Kacper, which was going to be filled in the end by Menno Klont, who didn't do too bad a job.
Yeah, he didn't do too bad of a job. But honestly, the thing is, he's not going to replace Gagzella in terms of the pace. Gagzella has been showing a bits of good driving this season, definitely, and Klont just, I think, possibly just because he's not in this just sphere and driving them all the time in the race. He's not up to pace, and he did finish the race, but he was the last of the finishers.
Yeah, he was to a certain degree, and actually, it's worth noting as well. Not only do we have all of those driver changes, Ben, but this was the first time, really, that we saw SRS with their initial lineup together, which was quite a cool thing for this particular weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's taken till race 4 for that to happen, which is a little concerning. But sometimes things get in the way of racing, and you have to take emergency measures with lineups. But no, it's nice to see them have their initial lineup together, and I think as we'll see later, it wasn't too bad for at least part of them. So yeah, nice to see them together.
Okay, we now move on to the subject of tyre strategy, and for the first time this year, everybody, Kacper, went exactly the same way. It was everybody going down the ultra soft, super soft, soft route. Nobody even considering medium or hard tyres. And it turned out that we ended up getting quite an interesting race as a result of that, with everybody being quite closely matched.
Honestly, saying that I would be that I'm surprised would be just an outright lie. This is exactly what I was expecting, and I'm expecting this to continue on. Really, this is I've not even seen the soft tire being used out of these three really in the race properly. So really, yeah, people using these tires to a good effect, but in a in a different in a different way. Everyone had their way of doing it, and as we'll especially discuss later, the pit stops differences and the pace differences on the tires were massive.
Yeah, it was. There was quite an interesting change in transition or shift in terms of who did what with tyres, and that's something I really want to go into in a bit more detail when we really get into the nuts and bolts of the race. But qualifying, we thought for a long time during qualifying, Ben, that this was just going to be another vodball demonstration, but right at the bitter end, we were proved wrong, and it turned out to be a pretty close call.
Exactly, yeah, it was really close at the top. Morris only about 2 tenths off Van Buren for pole. I mean, Van Buren has been fast every race so far, and another pole you could argue was sort of expected. He's been on the pace the whole season so far. But it was really close to the top. Cap in that bubble only P4, Baldy P3, which was a good showing. Cooper in the Hawkeye P5. That was pretty good. And Redshaw as well in the Woods. The Woods is not exactly a good car at the moment, nor is the Trinity engine. It's not quite there yet. So P6 from that Woods car from Lewis Redshaw is an absolutely brilliant achievement.
Yeah, we had a lot of people actually talking about the whole Redshaw up in the top 6 thing going into this one, because we did say, as a result of him being so strong in that qualifying session, we were kind of bigging him up as a potential podium runner, because it did seem as though this race was kind of lending itself to, not necessarily, I'm not saying Lewis Redshaw as an underdog, but it'd be nice to kind of have this, a new person to get in amongst the leaders, and we almost got to see that.
Yeah, I mean, Redshaw's been at the front end of the racing grid before. I mean, he was at CSG back in 2014, 2015, I think, and he was up there at the front on pace. And he's no doubt he's a talented driver. Maybe he hasn't had the car to achieve that the last few years. And at some places where the shorter tracks where the upgrades aren't so key. Or technical tracks like Valencia, where it's the form book goes a bit up in the air. We see him sort of shine. So I think he will be up at the front. Some point this season. Maybe it didn't pan out for him in this race, but he'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we go into the race itself, and inevitably, it's Valencia. We'd seen drama in the first lap in the Formula Challenge. We'd seen it in the Super Cup, so it was almost inevitable we were going to see it in the Super League. And where did we get it, Kacper? On the bridge, as expected. It's where all the stuff tends to happen at Valencia on the first lap. But not only was it kind of to be expected, but it took out 2 of the biggest names from this race.
Yeah, Redshaw and Cooper won't remember the beginning of this race at the very least in in the best of circumstances at least. It is it's a sad way to start a race, but I think in the it's really, if you have this bad of a luck or you make a mistake or something, it's at this point all you can do is really try and pick yourself up and try and do the best. But you kind of lose all the chances at this point. Of really doing, of really getting up there,
Absolutely. I mean, we could have had a completely different race if those 2 had been able to stay out of the wars in the first lap. I genuinely think both Cooper and Redshaw would have given really good fight to the guys up front. One thing we do need to speak about a little bit here is the team that is still running runner-up in the team standings here behind the Vodball, and that's Nordsjön. Now, we've said a lot of interesting things about them in the first part of the year, and we picked up too much on the negatives, I think it's fair to say. But when you consider where we had some difficulties in this race, I mean, obviously we have to discuss, Ben, the first ever DNF for David Fidek. I never ever thought I'd live to see the day he'd ever retire from a race, the way things have been going for him. Florian Geyer in P15 with all sorts of problems, but the team is still, at its core, literally doing everything it can and throwing everything at Vodball to try and keep up.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say Norton weren't too pleased with us after last race comments, but then it wasn't the best performance, and I think we'll have to keep highlighting the fact that the champions from last year, when they're not doing well, you got to highlight it. And it wasn't nice to see Fidek have his first retirement. It was really unlucky. He came into the second DRS zone, the car just seemed to snap on him into the wall, and that was it. The car was an absolute write-off. And for someone who builds their titles on consistency, and that's been one of the strong points of Fidek, it's tough to say if it's been there this season so far. It's a long way to go though. Things can change, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure we'll see Nordsjön back at the front, and it's tough to say about Guy. I'm not too sure what happened there throughout that race. P15 is it's not really what we expect from a Nordsjön.
There are a couple things with Geyer, for example, his spin as he was coming to the pits, but that's really just an effect. He was already running in the back. But another thing that, Fidok, I have had a little birdie tell me that apparently he said he's not even going for the title, just for a fun, relaxed season this season. So that's something that could be playing a part. His mindset is not there. Maybe he was just not paying enough attention, just being too relaxed, and just made a mistake. Car went from underneath him. As he did say in the broadcast that he was doing something else. He was paying attention to something else, and suddenly he did crash, if I recall correctly, in an interview live.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah, you're right.
That's surprising. That's surprising coming from the champion from last year. You don't necessarily expect that. I guess it was an unlucky crash. You could see if he had lost concentration, the car did just snap on him, and it's so easy to do into that second DRS zone with the kink. But they're still P2 in the standings. Let's not forget that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in terms of their consistency, been bringing it home in the points over the last four races. They've done a really solid job, and when we get to the next round of the championship, I think these guys could well be able to find themselves right back on pace. I think people are writing them off a little bit too early here.
Oh, totally. I think there's no doubt Nordsjön have pace. Okay, they're a little way off Vodball in terms of points at the moment, but it only takes a good few strong results, a couple of podiums, maybe the odd race win, and there's no doubt Nordsjön can do it. They've got a really good car, they've got a really good engine. They just need the results to come their way now, which they just haven't had this season so far.
Well, we need to discuss the Vodball Roadshow because we definitely got to see it again here in Valencia. It was a little bit different, I suppose, from this time, with Rudy Van Buren deciding to go 2 stints on the Ultras and then just spend the rest of the day on Supersofts. So it was kind of, a basic one from him, only getting 5 pit stops in. Gergo decided to go down a very different route, Gergo Baldi, going down the 8 pit stop route. Now, technically speaking, one of those is actually unnecessary, Kacper. So it's a difficult one because I think Gergo had a little bit of a second guess strategy. They were so busy focusing on the Vodball that they almost lost out on a podium.
Yeah, it was a tough race in terms of the pit stops, and again, 8 pit stops with one, even if one is unnecessary, 7 pit stops, that's a lot. And the strategy was completely different. Again, it was this kind of idea of, I'm going to grab back a lot of time throughout a few laps, pit in, only lose about 14 seconds, and try to gain that 14 plus seconds back. But then it turned out that may have played against him, especially later on, with a bit of drama with its teammates. So So there's always a lot of a danger when you're pitting in. And I think that doing 8 pit stops is just exacerbating it so much. There's just so much that can go wrong when you have so many chances.
Absolutely. I mean, we want to talk a little bit about that, the whole Gego Baldi race in a bit more detail, and we will come back to that. The split in the tyres, again, this race, sorry, because we had so many people deciding, the race tyre ultimately was the super soft. That was really, the tyre that held up for the longest on stints. People were able to get a lot more speed out of it. The ultra softs did not last long, Ben. I mean, they just fell so quickly. I mean, most people were only getting about 6 to 7 laps out of them. What interested me actually about it was that in the early stages, Vodbull actually kept Risto Capit out on the tyres longer than Rudy, which we hadn't seen in the first 3 races. It was a very interesting change in their strategy.
For sure, I think we saw who had done their homework going into this race in terms of tyres, and it was pretty clear that the super soft didn't have as much of a time offset as it has at previous rounds this time, so it made sense to use it as a race tyre. You weren't losing as much time, you could do less pit stops, and it just worked. And I think it was interesting to see Capit stay out a bit longer. He has been harsh on his tyres, and it was, it's just surprising that he came in first. But ultimately, it paid off for Capit as well. Brilliant P2. Okay, it was a little way off Van Buren, but that Vodbull is just hooked up in terms of setup, in terms of tyre life. Only doing 5 pit stops, utilising both tyre compounds really well. That car just looks unbeatable at the moment, I feel.
It was interesting. I think at the end of the race, they came home 1 and 2. But even in the interviews afterwards, there was almost a bit of a sense that, Risto is now getting a tiny, tiny, weeny bit frustrated that he's not able to stay with Rudy on the same pace. It was light-hearted banter at the end of the race, but you kind of get the sense that I don't know how long Risto's going to be as content with finishing in second position behind Rudy by half a minute for much longer. I think he's going to need that win to pick him up a bit.
I wonder if we could end up with a Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg situation here.
I was just thinking potential there, yeah, because they're a perfect team when they're working, in unison. But I don't know how long they're going to be in unison anymore.
Yeah, but then again, what can you do? It's not like if Rudy is going to slow down, and they're still driving the same car. There's no trickery there. The only thing that can change is the setup, and I don't think there is this much time in a setup within a team. I don't think the actual team would want that to be this big of a difference. Even if there was anything in a team, you would want the drivers to be finishing within 5 seconds of each other, basically by the end of the race or thereabouts. So I think that if there is a frustration, I think that's just and only down to just the outright speed of Rudy being far superior so far.
I think, on the contrary, though, this could work as a really good motivator for Capit. If he's seeing week in, week out, he's losing by like 40 seconds to Van Buren, that could, prompt him to, put even more laps in, to work on the setup even more, to really refine it, and that could drive him to another win.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. Speaking of driving to another good result, one guy who shook off all of our criticisms over the last 3 races of him, when he seemed to go for crazy maneuvers and then let it all filter away. We saw a changed Fran Lopez in round 4. I have never seen him drive that well. And Kacper, this time, it was like he had a point to prove on home soil. He was not going to be intimidated. And the guy he took on at least 7 different bouts through the course of the race was Gego Baldi. I mean, I have never seen a rivalry like that in one race unfold and then settle itself and then unfold again so many times through one race. It was spectacular.
No, that was definitely one of the best battles I have seen in Superleague in a while. And to be fair, I've only started following it last season, but this is absolutely the best thing I've seen so far. But the thing is, Fran has definitely showed his good side today, or not today, but during the race. But the thing with it is, he's still Although he's still not as quick as he was showing in Red Archer last year. But on the other hand, what I'm seeing as well is I don't think that Adonis is quick enough. I think that he is doing the best he can in that Adonis, and this was as quick as the Adonis can go. Unless you literally had Rudy in the car, which that's the. I mean, I think honestly it's just that the Adonis at the moment just either does not have the setup for the car or something is not there. But I think Fran Lopez did an absolutely amazing job to fight with Gergo, and honestly, it's all very interesting because it would never, that whole battle would never happen if not for some drama with Wouters.
That's a very good point. And yes, Diego Baldi probably should have been a good half a minute further up the road from Fran for most of that race. But yes, Ben, we need to talk about this. Lap 20. Obviously, we've got Daniel Sharanku in the points in the pits, sorry, with damage in one of the Wouters Automotive cars. Then the other one, about to lap it, comes into the pits, Diego Baldi, and he's in his pit box. So what does Diego do to minimize the damage? He pushes Daniel Sharanku's car further forward and out of the way. Now, this doesn't technically break the parallel pit stop rule, but what we need to discuss here, Ben, is it illegal to push a car out of the way to gain an advantage in this manner? Have they dodged a penalty here?
Oh, it's a tough one. I sat there watching it and being, having worked in the disciplinary committee before, looking through the rule book and stuff, I was so torn on what I would have done in their position. I think, firstly, I have no idea how Daniel Sharanku got into this situation, given the car has anti-stall, and he was saying he stalled the car.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how he managed to, completely turn off the engine and not be able to reboot it. I don't know if he accidentally hit the turn off button on his keyboard or something. It's a crazy situation to get into in the first place, but if Sharanku had a problem and they were on, something like Discord, like a lot of drivers use to speak to each other, if he knew he couldn't get the engine restarted, he should have pressed escape and cleared the box. That's, if you're not going to get it restarted, you get out of it. Browdy turns up then and he's sat behind Sharanku. Okay, his only option was to push Sharanku out the way to get to his pit box. The problem here is, has he gained an advantage by not waiting longer, if you know what I mean, before Sharanku had pressed escape?
Yeah, I mean, basically what he's done, in effect, is he's taken the rulebook into his own hands here.
Yeah.
Now, is that the right way of going about it, though?
I don't, because there's no rule against, pushing a car out the way. The rule for pushing a car stipulates that it has to be on track and that you're helping a car either get to the pits or cross the line. So say a car had run out of fuel on the last lap and it's your teammate and you push him back, then you'd be disqualified. You're helping a car with outside assistance. It's such a grey area in the rules, given that this is not on track, it's in the pit lane, and we're only helping him get out the way, not finish the race. We're not giving the car being pushed an advantage, it's the person doing the pushing. So I'm extremely interested to see how this is ruled on, whether someone has protested it, and whether it will be ruled on by the disciplinary committee. I think if I was in their shoes, I would give a penalty because Baldi's gained an advantage by not waiting for longer. He's waited less in effect, but it's so tough to call. So tough to call.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the disciplinary board that way.
No.
Such a difficult one. Let's go to another positive here, Kacper. The worst car on the grid, as we know, is Lee Morris's, and yet again, P3. I mean, how the hell does this guy do it every single time? He is just... If we're going to call Rudy Van Buren the best car and package on the grid, then considering he's driving out of his skin at the moment, is Lee Morris the best driver on the grid?
I couldn't say if he's the best driver on the grid at the moment. I don't think anybody really could. So, because basically, apart from the first race, the cars are all different. But we also don't know how much the upgrades are going to be are really affecting cars, and that's one discussion point that we highlighted. We have absolutely no. We have a weird feeling, like as if the upgrade systems could be problematic, to say the least, at the moment. There may be an issue with it. So Lee Morris may be driving the least developed car, but they may have not been developed in the worst way.
I think just to add to that, just to clear up, any confusion on that, the Mad Cape car is primarily developed around front wing downforce at the moment, and it's the same with the VOD Bull. They haven't done anything to say front wing drag. And if you go diving into all the car numbers, look through all the nitty gritty physics, what we're finding is that any upgrade to front wing downforce appears substantially greater than an upgrade to any other part of the car. So you could upgrade 10% of downforce, reduce your rear wing and your front wing in the setup to sort of offset that, I guess, because you've got more downforce to start off with. And then the drag being produced by having a lower front wing is more than, say, if you'd done a front wing drag upgrade. In short, it's more effective to go to upgrade just front wing downforce than focus on drag to get more top speed. It's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily an issue. It's just a weird side effect of the way the upgrades have been done this year, and it's clear to see who's capitalised that, I guess.
Yeah, but then again, we are also looking at the two seemingly the worst developed cars on the grid being on the podium, taking all three positions on the podium. So would that be a problem at this point?
It is an interesting one, isn't it? I'm not quite sure what the right answer is for that.
It's tough. I mean, obviously it won't be reviewed this year. Upgrades are pretty much set in stone. Otherwise, if you've already upgraded one thing and suddenly the parameters change for it, it all gets a bit complex. I think you can see there's some teams that haven't necessarily taken advantage of it. Woods haven't done any front wing downforce development. And they're way off at the moment. I think they quite happily admit that they're not there yet. There's some teams who haven't done it loads and that have also done development on things like drag and dirty air that doesn't seem to be having as much effect. Whilst you look at Vodball, Street Fighter are up there as well. They've done a lot of front wing development, and again, it's Mad Cape's only point. If they're basing the whole car setup around it, then that could be the answer to why Lee Morris is doing so well and what appears in terms of upgrade points not as good a car.
Very interesting stuff here. There's a couple of drivers from the race that I want to give special mention to, having sat back and thought about it a lot. Obviously, I really enjoyed the Lopez Baldi dice. I thought everybody was on the edge of their seats from that one. But there are some other drivers who deserve our credit. In particular, the Australian, Tom Hinds, P10. He's been one of the unluckiest drivers in Super League of late. And it was really, really great to see him getting into the top 10, Kacper. And not just by fluke, on pure merit. He really did work hard for that top 10.
I'm super glad for Thomas. He has been having such a bad run of luck over the last half year with different series, or even maybe longer, but just really a string of bad luck, and this seems to have turned it all around. And P10 in such a high level series as Super League in such difficult cars and purely on merit is an absolutely stunning result, I think.
Yeah, we're really happy for you, mate. There's a couple of others that I wanted to pick up on as well. Alex Cooper, yes, he did get entangled up in that first corner incident, but good to see him moving his way through to the top 10. Jeff Fournier, we can't really refute, how brilliant he was in terms of his rookie performance, and he got an 11th place out of it. That's really quite impressive for a first time, especially considering it was Valencia that he made his debut. A lot of other rookies would have binned it in the wall, but he didn't, and fair play to him. The other man I thought that was really impressive as well, Ben, was the Croatian, David Francic. He was so quiet, barely even noticed in the whole course of the race. But P6, that's quite masterful how he pulled that off.
Yeah, a great performance in an okay car. It's nice to see David Francic doing well again. He's he wasn't there for the first two races, and then China was wet, so the format was turned upside down. But he did really well there. To be honest, you can't argue with P6 in what we have to remember is a new team to Super League. really solid result, and it'd be nice to see him sort of stay up there.
Right, I'm going to go for the nerdy stats here because there are people who pick up on these kind of things, so it's worth being a tiny bit nerdy. We only had 7 drivers on the lead lap this time out in Valencia, so again, proof that the pace is really quite strong with Bodbull compared to the midfield runners at the moment. There's definitely going to have to be some head scratching to try and turn that around. But interestingly, Valencia, we all kind of went, oh no, here we go. We thought there was going to be absolute mass carnage, and we'd seen in Australia, only 16 cars made it home, and we'd think, oh no, how many are we going to get here? 10, 9? Is it going to be another Panis Monaco? Is it going to be about 5 cars that make it home? But no, in fact, we got 19 of the starters finishing, the most that we've had this season. So that would suggest that the drivers are starting to get used to the new cars then, Kacper.
Yeah, it nearly would, wouldn't it? It is such a tight circuit, and we have seen that, even going into the bridge, there is just very little space. There are so many corners where it's so easy to just not feel the width of the car. There are so many places where you can just lose control and end up in a wall. And we have seen close calls. We have seen people hitting the wall even with and losing their wing. But a lot of the time, they actually did keep on running as well. And 19 finishers. It's very impressive considering we were finishing, I think, 16 for the first 2 races, all of them. So it's a bit mind-boggling. But at the same time, I'm so glad to see that people are finally getting the handle on these cars.
Okay, so. Let's go for bests and worsts. We're getting towards the end of the show. So, Ben Willis, best driver of the weekend. Who would you say?
Tough one. I mean, obviously, again, you'd lead to someone like Van Buren, who obviously dominated again. Gergo Baldi is one that I would quite highly rate for the battle, had it not been for the whole pit stop debacle. Great battle with Lopez there. And Lee Morris did really well in what, again, is not necessarily the best car on paper. Whether it is in terms of actual physics is to be decided. But great drive from Lee Morris there as well.
Okay, Kacper, driver of the day. Who would you give it to?
I'll go on the other side of the battle. I think, honestly, Fran Lopez did a fantastic job this time around. Going from my worst driver, I think, last week to my best driver this week. So, or not last week, but last time around. And I honestly think that he did a fantastic job defending in that battle. And I think he, in seemingly with a slightly worse pace, I think he kept his cool for the most part and did an absolutely fantastic stoic defense. And there to a battle there are always 2 sides, and there's always because he could have just let he go. And I think, honestly, he did a very, very good job with the strategy as well. It was he was keeping us on our toes until the very end, which I think it was a great race from him.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be on the side of hashtag Team Kolodicic. I've got that whole vibe going. I'm very much of, in awe of Fran Lopez. He was just a different driver compared to what we'd seen in the first 3 races. For me, in terms of, how improved a driver can go from one round to the next, from the bottom of the bottom to the cream of the crop, he was absolutely brilliant in Spain. Yeah, for me, driver of the day, without a shadow of a doubt. Team of the day. This one should be fairly straightforward, Kacper, shouldn't it, surely?
I mean, is there any other answer but Bodbull?
No, there isn't. No, sorry. Ben, is there any other anything you want to give into that? Probably isn't.
Do I want to? I don't know. Bodbull.
No.
Dominated. They, it just shows how well they've got that car dialed in. And reward of a P1 or 2, you can't ask for better.
Yeah, I think in the Britain's Got Talent of GPVWC, it's 3 yeses. Yeah, we're quite happy about that.
Golden buzzer on that one, there you go.
Yeah, golden buzzer, no problem. So, worst driver of the day. This could end up being quite controversial, Ben, actually.
I've got a few here. Nordson, both of them, I want to see them do well. I want to see them back up the front. They're just not doing it at the moment, and I really hope we see almost a changed team at Austria. And hopefully they'll respond to our comments, and we'll do. As well as that, Ben Horrell, he had quite a few unfortunate meetings with the walls at Valencia, shall we say, and when his teammate David Francic is up in P6 and he's down in 18th in, an okay car, I'd expect a bit better there, personally.
You're not as humble as you used to be, Ben. I could have sworn that you would have picked yourself in this one, potentially.
Oh,
potentially. No. That's a bit harsh. You did well, considering that's a tricky car and it's a very tricky circuit. I mean,
for 12 laps till I hit a wall, but
I didn't exactly colour myself in glory on Formula Challenge on the Tuesday, so I can barely speak. I mean, did you guys see it?
Yes, I did. Yes,
it was. Worry. I was really hoping you hadn't.
I haven't, so you're grand.
I saw it all.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine. Good. I will make sure I destroy the YouTube video as soon as it's humanly
Destroy
possible.
the evidence.
Oh yeah, destroy the evidence. Kacper, who would you pick?
Right. I'm probably gonna get a bit of hate, but Vidoc. Honestly, a rookie mistake. That's just what it is. Not something we should see from a champion. To crash a car on a straight with DRS or not, it is a rookie mistake. It just appears like, and Norton in general, I think, is also for my team. It's quite clearly just not their race. Absolutely horrendous points out of here. Yes, they're still second in championship. I have no idea how that's going on with this race, but yeah, absolutely the worst from this race, for me at least.
I'm gonna give it to somebody who probably doesn't deserve it to a certain degree, but just because of how they started the race compared to where they ended up, it was all decided on lap 1 for me. I'm actually going to give it to Lewis Redshaw, because that was, for me, that was the Johnny Herbert Monza 1994 moment.
I have to contest with that. I mean, I agree it didn't go well, but that was such a tough, entry to the bridge there, and I think it was more a racing incident, not much you could do, but it's tough.
It is contested. I did say it could get controversial. I mean, it's difficult because that was the best chance Redshaw was probably going to get this side of this season to get himself on the podium, and for that to just fall apart with, yes, it was a racing incident, but two drivers of that caliber, Redshaw and Cooper, you could almost argue two drivers of that ability should not really be getting themselves into that kind of scrape on the first lap. You can argue Valencia is tight and very twisty, and it gets really, really hectic on the first lap. But those two, you really would expect those two to stay out of trouble even on the first lap. And it's just, I know both of them were excited. It's a difficult start to a race. You've got to get yourself in there. You've got to get your elbows out. But both of their races were just completely tarnished as a result of it. I mean, if it is a racing incident, then it's got to be joint. It's got to be Cooper and Redshaw. But again, both of them had a golden opportunity there, and it was basically thrown away within 40 seconds of the race starting. So it is for them a sort of a Johnny Herbert Monza 94 moment. That's your best qualifying opportunity, your best shot yet to be in a great position this part of the season, and it was just thrown away in what could easily have been avoided. So it's difficult. Right, before we finish, we've started to get into the looks of these cars a little bit now. We're used to the sight of these ones, but obviously, we're all geeks, we're all nerds. We all quite like the way that these cars look, especially if the livery have come out okay. What, for you, Kacper, is the best looking car out there on the grid? Now that we've got used to, seeing these cars out there a lot, which one are you keen to look forward to seeing past you?
Honestly, really quite like the Red Archer. It's a really neat looking car. There are some really nice looking cars, but I think that's just one of the cleanest looking, just nice contrast everywhere. I like darker cars as well, so the black doesn't offend me either. So I really quite like it.
Ben, what's your thoughts on this? What's your favorite?
It's the Adonis for me. It's painted by Doug Hilliard, who does all the Dre skins for me, and just some of the intricate sort of tribal designs on the nose and along the side pods. Every year I just love seeing that Adonis. Just it's a real eye pleaser, I feel.
Yeah, it's pretty. I quite like the Adonis. For me personally, I've got to go down the line of the Valters. I quite like the Valters because it's kind of red baronish, isn't it? It's like they're coming. They are coming to hunt you down. They're going to take it on. It's a very sort of intimidating and menacing look to it, which I
Definitely.
quite like. It sort of does exactly what it says on the tin. I mean, when they hunted down Vodbull at Shanghai, it was like, you really got on the back end of your seat, and it was the whole kind of energy of that race, upped tempo, and the look of the car really accentuates it. So I'm a big fan of the Valters car this year. So of course we need to focus on the next round now, which is going to take us to a circuit with medium degradation on a very quick lap. It's possible that as we head to the Red Bull Ring here, Kacper, we may well see softs and mediums come into play potentially. Could be the first time really we see them as the perfect choice.
I'll be a bit controversial here again, maybe, but I don't see that happening.
Do you think it's going to be ultra softs and super softs again?
I think at worst it is going to be super softs and softs at the hardest.
I'm not so sure. I think because the lap at Austria is so short, the offset between all the tyres should in theory be smaller. And I think there is a viable option for saving a few pit stops by trying a soft tyre or maybe even a medium. Maybe not a medium.
It's a difficult one because, of course, Red Bull Ring, it has a lot of elevation changes as well.
True, and that second sector is really tough on tyres.
Yeah, and there's a lot of banking there, actually. A lot of the corners are, quite arced. So this could end up really second-guessing us in terms of strategy. I have a feeling it could be very split. I would not at all be surprised if some of the teams decide, you know what, we're going to go for 7, maybe 8 pit stops on the ultra soft, super soft option. Others might decide, you know what, we might actually save ourselves a bit of hassle if we go down the 3 or 4 route on the softs and mediums. That would be really interesting to see who's done what either way. But there doesn't seem to be a clear, straight answer with this circuit. And I think it's because of the short length of the circuit, the bank nature, the elevation changes, the medium deg. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens on the first few laps.
Exactly, for sure. I think it'll be really interesting to see who chooses what in tyres. I think we will see some splits. I don't think it'll be unanimous at all. I would like maybe to see some of the back marker teams try the soft medium route and see if they can get up the grid that way.
Can we envisage a different winner than a Vodbull? Can we see somebody else cracking the top step?
That's tough to call without seeing any sort of practice around there at the moment. I have no idea, who's looking the favourite around there. Austria's a tough track because you need that engine power for the straights between the hairpins, the power out the hairpins. But then that downforce in sector 2 is so key that it's going to make setup, it's going to make the ideal car.
I can see quite a lot of drama at the Remus hairpin.
Yep.
I could see a lot of drama. Not just on the first lap either. I can see quite a few people going, this is my moment, this is my moment. No it isn't.
Shades of 1999 F1, I feel.
Oh yes, I can see this definitely becoming a key factor. So we'll have to get ourselves prepared for that. Of course, there is more GPVWC radio content here on SimNews.TV to keep an eye on. On the 3rd of May, once again, we return to the scrutineer, keeping us all very much scientifically educated. Just about got that out. That's impressive. Yes, 10 o'clock on the 3rd of May. Make sure you tune in for that. It's going to be a really, really good show, as always. And then we're back again on the 8th of May at 8 p.m. with Parker's Pit Stop. Always entertaining and a really good listen. Make sure you're there for that. We're back again the week after race 4. Race 4? I think we're race 5 actually. We're back. Well, I can't keep count. That's my problem. Race 5 of the championship, the Red Bull Ring. We'll be back on the 11th of May at 8 p.m. And of course, you can follow us on everything that we're doing on social media in between shows and share it to everybody in the GPVWC community as well. At SL Show SN. We'll be trying to keep up to date with more GPVWC content via Downforce Radio, which is at Downforce Radio. On Twitter and on Facebook as well, of course. And one final plug, I'm going to do it because I'm very shameless. A lot of people, obviously, in the community would have read about the unfortunate accident in the touring car weekend at Donington Park, about the fate of young teenage racer Billy Munger. His fund is going very, very well indeed, which is great news. And he has actually spoken out for the first time today, as we record this on the Tuesday, on his Facebook page, which is absolutely fantastic news. and he's thanked everybody for all of their fantastic support. Over £750,000 now raised for him, which is brilliant news. Downforce Radio is also running a similar fund, by the way, for a club racer who races Renault Clios in the Tricolor Trophy of the Track Attack Race Club, called Craig Walker, who is currently recovering at Doncaster Hospital in the United Kingdom. We've raised over £11,000 for his convalescence. If you can head to the website, downforceradio.com, and when you see a Renault Clio, click it, and then it will take you straight to the Just Giving page. It would be fantastic if you could get involved. We're all racers, whether we're virtual or real. We're all brothers and sisters in this world of motor racing, and we all speak the same language. As far as I'm concerned, we all feel that same emotion when the lights go out, no matter what we are racing in. So let's treat each other as the family that we are.
I think I speak on behalf of everybody here that we wish them all the best and hope for all the best in their recovery.
Indeed. Right, sorry to end on a somber note, but the racing will continue, as it always does, of course. And we're going to be back, as we said, here on the Super League show on the 11th of May, 8 p.m. Don't forget to tune in to the Red Bull Ring itself. There's going to be 3 days of non-stop action. Formula Challenge, which I won't be racing in. So normal service will be resumed on the Tuesday. Super League on the Thursday, following the Super Cup on the Wednesday, of course. Thank you to Kacper. Thank you to Ben. Once again, gentlemen, great show.
Thank you.
It was lovely as always.
And we'll be back for more just after the Red Bull Ring. Will we get a different winner on the top step? Will Vodbull continue their march, or has somebody else got a trick up their sleeve? We'll find out when we return here on the Super League show on the 11th of May. Bye for now.